In this episode of Build Back Better Caribbean, we brought the curtain down on celebrating International Women's Day 2022 with a discussion focused on the legacy and contribution of Caribbean feminist activism to breaking the bias and advancing gender equality. My guests, Dr. Leith Dunn, Honorary Research Fellow and former head of the Mona unit of the Institute for Gender and Development Studies, and Chanelle Beatrice, Outreach and Communications Officer of Feminitt Caribbean, had a lively and engaging conversation, which was recorded live on 31st March 2022 at the UNIC studio in Port of Spain, Trinidad. We invite you to listen and enjoy. Dr. Dunn, Chanelle, thank you very much for joining us. Sincere welcome to you all. So let's get this conversation started. So Dr. Dunn, let me pitch the first question to you, and we'll talk a little bit about the Institute for Gender and Development Studies. You're the former head of the Mona unit of this very important academic space for research and collaboration on gender and development issues. And it's also significant that the IGDS is part of a regional network, so there are 3 units throughout the cross campus. Tell us what you think has been the role and the value of this Caribbean IGDS network in building the regional feminist movement.
Thank you very much, Lindy and Chanelle. So IGDS has in fact helped to institutionalize gender development in the academy. That's important because it provides a space for academic research, training, as well as outreach and advocacy. So we have 4 units, a regional coordinating office, as well as the 3 campus units that you mentioned. And over the years, a rare body of scholarship in terms of research and publications has in fact been developed, and there has been to fill a lot of knowledge gaps about inequality, gender and other intersecting inequalities. But I would say that having the institute established is in fact mainstreaming gender in the academy, which is a major achievement. We have a bachelor's at Mona, and we supervise graduate students. The other units have also minors in gender, masters and PhDs. So we have graduated persons who are activists who are helping to support gender mainstreaming in various countries around the region, and also making their mark elsewhere.
The IGDS cross-campus network has helped to institutionalize gender issues within the Caribbean Academy. So it's done a very good job, I think one could argue, in forming that academic infrastructure for the regional feminist movement. What are, in your opinion, some of the other elements that are helping to sustain or support the regional feminist movement?
Okay, so our mandate is teaching, research, and outreach. And that outreach includes advocacy, and those 3 inform each other. So the research that is done, the activism actually informs the contents, and we work from a human rights-based agenda in promoting feminist activism, gender and development, which is not quite the same, but it's another conversation. We work with a number of regional and international agencies, as well as local women's groups and other NGOs, right? And those span a whole range of interest groups, from household workers, people working on climate change, policy analysts in our government systems, and several staff members of the IGDS, in fact, have helped to develop national policies. For example, Professor Patricia Mohammed has done a number of those. And there's more we will talk about in the conversation, but just to say that IGDS, those 3 prongs, teaching, research, and advocacy, grounds the work that we are doing and informs, and it breaks new barriers, provides new information.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dunn. Chanelle, I want to bring you in the conversation, staying with that regional lens. So, Feminitt, you are based here in Trinidad and Tobago, but your outlook, your messaging is definitely regional. How does the regional outlook serve the activism needs of Feminitt?
Okay, so for one, when I think about regional collaborations with other organizations, it's definitely one of the pillars of our work at Feminitt. We strongly believe in collaboration and partnerships, and so it's really important for us to pay particular attention to partnerships and collaborations regionally, because we have that space to learn from each other, be able to share resources, come up with collective mandates, It really makes the work stronger, because together we're a force, And I think so far with the work that we're doing, we have paid a lot of attention to partnerships. We recently had a couple of solidarity circles surrounding IWD. Previous to that, we would have had an amazing partnership with the International Planned Parenthood Federation of the Americas and the Caribbean, where we did a campaign on breaking the stigmas and myths about abortion. And I think what I would like to see is a lot more of local organizations see the need and the importance of collaborating with other groups and organizations who share that same interests.
I want to get into the idea, the concept, you'll tell me if I'm wrong or not, of a Caribbean feminist identity. So, Chanelle, let me start with you. Feminitt is a young organization. You are a young person. So you have at your back about 30 or 40 years, and we're just using 30 or 40 as a marker of milestones, of legacy, of struggle and successes for the women's movement, the gender rights movement. Within the Caribbean itself, we have organizations like CAFRA, the Caribbean Association for Feminist Research and Action. There's a lot of legacy and a lot of rich history there for you to build on. In your opinion, as a young feminist, what in the 21st century does it mean to be a Caribbean feminist?
That has been definitely, I love this question. It's definitely something I've been thinking about recently, what defines Caribbean feminism. And I think it's a mesh of all our cultures and all the things we stand for and want to see for ourselves, simply because, we're made up of so many different, not beings, but different aspects of things. We're, like a callaloo. And I think it's really important for us to find establishing what Caribbean feminism is, because then we'll be able to know what exactly we want for ourselves, like the best way forward. And I think, if I'm being quite honest, it's still a work in progress for me to fully understand what the term Caribbean feminism is. I'm fine with saying it's a work in progress. So far, to me, I think it's just understanding how we can fit the needs of everyone, because everything is intersectional. So I think for sure, Caribbean feminism is intersectional. But to say I have a definite definition of what the term is, it's still a work in progress to me.
Dr. Dunn, what are your thoughts on it?
One of the contributions that the Institute and its staff, academics, have made is recognizing that the types of subordination that women experience in the region are going to be informed by those intersecting factors. So, for example, we're talking about race, ethnicity, class, or history of enslavement and indentureship and colonialism. And therefore, we bring those identities together in our analysis of what the problem is and therefore what the solutions are. So part of it is about empowerment, gender equality. It's about being inclusive, but it is also about respecting diversity, right? So I think all of those things, there's a space for everyone. And when we look at an individual, we're not looking at the individual only in terms of their biological sex, but we have several identities, and we need to factor those in when we're looking and talking about gender equality for all. So we have our sustainable development goals, we have commitments we have made. So for me, Caribbean feminism embodies both our historical and contemporary realities, and that are really unique to us.
I want to take off on what you were talking about, the sustainable development goals and that whole development project that the Caribbean is pursuing right now. That obviously is a work in progress. We're in a space, an unprecedented space, given the pandemic, given the urgency of the climate crisis and so on, where the terms recover better and build back better are very, very prominent. And, you can understand the draw, because these are terms that seek to kind of define and direct how we as a Caribbean want to respond to these new realities. We want to redesign our spaces and our structures so that they better serve our development needs. And the Caribbean Feminist Project, the movement, we could argue goes hand in hand with the development project. Breaking the bias speaks to a gender equal society, free of bias and discrimination, an inclusive society. All of these form part of this vision of development that the Sustainable Development Goals speak to and so on. So I have a question here, and it's hopefully not too big to unpack, but we'll think about it, and I'll toss it to Dr. Dunn first. How do you see the goals of the Caribbean feminist movement supporting the Caribbean in this move to build back better?
So one of the benefits of having a gender agenda and having gender analysis tools and having gender mainstreaming. So gender mainstreaming is a process and a strategy that has been in fact endorsed and promoted by the United Nations and adopted by many countries, right? And therefore, those skills enable us, for example, to look at inclusive language, right? When we have policies and programs and so on, is there inclusive language? Secondly, in terms of data has to inform development goals, right? And one of the contributions of the feminist movement, I think, has been a recognition of the need to have data disaggregated by sex and those intersectionalities, so you can see who needs what. Another element is participation, underscoring the importance of participation and ensuring nothing for us without us. So the whole principle of inclusiveness, of conversations and so on, in terms of understanding a problem, all of those development goals from a multidimensional thing. So we're not doing something for. So whether it is poverty, health, education, gender equality, reducing the inequalities, and of course, the environmental elements, all of that is important. And the feminists in the Caribbean, gender and development specialists in the Caribbean, have in fact been working on those issues. So there's a body of research which says this is important. Here's how you would integrate it. Yeah. So I think those are some of the ways in which we have been able to support the development of the region.
As the future of the region, what do you think?
I really want to piggyback on a lot of these things that Dr. Dunn has said, because I think for sure our generation and not just our generation, but a lot of NGOs who focus on gender rights and gender rights activism in the Caribbean, we really see the need and the importance for the and for doing the work that our policymakers would have agreed to work on. We are the ones putting these things at the forefront. We are the ones fighting for it every day, whether it be on the ground or through digital advocacy. And I think also in this current climate, digital advocacy has been really responsible for a widespread of this kind of information for us to continue the work, especially with all the restrictions you would have had, which would hinder some sort of activism on the groundwork. So I do think that we have been putting in the work to continue putting these issues and all these sustainable goals at the forefront, and constantly reminding leaders that these are the things we need to work on. These are the things we need to have a sustainable future for generations to come.
Great. Yes, Dr. Dunn.
Important things that we need to give a lot more attention to is the reality of persons with disabilities, men, women, and children with disabilities. They're part of our society, and they are often invisible. We have ratified the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and there's always a gender dimension to that. Similarly, over the years, the rights of children, particularly now in the post-COVID period, when they have to go and recalibrate, rethink, education deficits need to be filled. And a number of children have fallen out of school, including girls who are becoming pregnant as a result of that, right? So we need to be focusing around these and other issues. Migration, we have collaborated with the International Organization for Migration on that as a strategy which Caribbean people have always used. So there are several areas in which we have done work, but there are several gaps that we need to pay more attention to. Housing, climate change, we're most at risk as small island developing states in the region. And it is important for us to look at that from a gender perspective, right? Build the capacity to do the analysis. So the partnership, looking at these sustainable development goals and the realities we face is so very critical. So gender is essential.
Communicating and educating about gender issues. The UNIC, we are a public information agency, so we're always excited by this topic. Dr. Dunn, you have been educating about gender issues in the academic space. Chan, Feminitt, education about gender issues is, from what I've seen, a core part of your machinery, your outreach machinery. Has the Caribbean approach to communicating and educating about gender issues evolved or changed over time? And if so, what has changed? And if so, why?
We historically are an oral society. We have a very strong Caribbean culture. So some of that, in fact, has been part of the strategy we use, whether it is music, drama, poetry, art, and so on, but there's scope. We have the possibility now of animation, which can be a very important tool for communicating around gender, because there's still a lot of or limited awareness despite all the work that has been done. So we need to find more innovative ways of communicating the difference between sex and gender identities, transgender realities, for example, which is very important. So in our course on gender, sex and reproductive health, HIV and AIDS, we have had students performing, for example, as part of their course assignment. So we have to find innovative ways of engaging the young people. But images are also very powerful, photographic images and so on. So I'd say it has changed over time in the sense that we have had to find new ways of sharing ideas and getting our young people involved. I was so excited a couple of weeks ago. Dr. Karen Carpenter, who is now the head of Mona, shared with me a TikTok which two colleagues had done on promoting gender courses. I was so happy because that's so much more exciting than writing a poster or a blurb or something like that.
Chan, I want to throw this question to you.
Honestly, I'm taking this time to say I feel super proud to be a part of Feminitt with this question. I think locally we are known for producing work that can be consumed by anybody and everybody. Like, so at the beginning of things, well, it's one of our goals where we strive to be an educational hub where people can access information. And one thing we always pay particular attention to is curating our information in a way that can be consumed no matter the way in which you prefer to. So we diversify our content when it comes to our digital advocacy. So if you were to check or visit our social media, any of our social media platforms, you would see animations. You would see sometimes TikToks, as Dr. Dunn mentioned. We also try to really include subtitles for those persons who are hearing impaired, And additionally to that, we do have like webinars and online events that would attract those who would like to speak. But I think it's really important for us to continue that diverse way of producing information, because there's no one right way to get information across about gender activism, and human rights. I think it's also a really great way to reach different audiences in terms of the age bracket. So if you think about TikTok, you can reach anybody right now. I mean, at the beginning, you would think that it was just Gen Z on TikTok, but now my mom is on TikTok and she loves it there. So, I mean, we can reach a wide audience on TikTok. And I think about Instagram serving those persons who don't really like a lot of words and stuff. You see images, you see graphics, you see animated videos. And then we have Facebook for like webinars, live events, and some sort of wordier content there. And then we even have LinkedIn, because we also live on LinkedIn, and we share our blogs there because we have the corporate world there who would prefer reading stuff, and seeing data.
I'm very excited about these changes. I was thinking about Sister and Theatre Collective in Jamaica a few years back doing a play at Parliament to talk about, it was a debate on termination of pregnancy. And they drew on their experiences of working with women in the community to present this to Parliament. Now, that is part of what we need to do. So we have different strategies to work with different target groups, right? We have lots of problems, sexual harassment and those things. We need to find ways of engaging our policymakers in a way that will make them listen, and change. So there's lots more to do, lots of scope for partnership and, turning things upside down, but keeping our focus on a common agenda, promoting equality for all and change. So there's lots more to do, lots of scope for partnerships and, turning things upside down, but keeping our focus on a common agenda promoting equality for all.
Dr. Dunn, unless you want to say anything more, I'll just pass it to Chanelle.
I was just going to wrap up to say, what I would want to see as a gender equal Caribbean. I think about, freedom of expression, and particularly that freedom we associate with mass. I think I would just like to see a Caribbean where our music isn't misogynistic, where it doesn't promote gender-based violence, a place where diversity can live safely, and we can just all understand that, human rights for all, regardless of who we are, what we look like.
Dr. Dunn, final words first.
I have an uphill climb in terms of change in legislation, which is discriminatory, and we need specialists with gender training to really break those barriers. As a Jamaican, in terms of the security forces, I've done work with the security forces, and I was very pleased with Commander Antoinette Miss Gorman's appointment as the head of the Jamaican Army, the only woman right now in the world. I know also that the Prime Minister of Barbados has in fact had a tremendous impact on breaking this stereotype of women in leadership. I'm saying that there's icons out there who we need to emulate and encourage others as we talk about empowering another generation of younger women and men to, promote gender equality and development.
This podcast series is produced and presented by the United Nations Information Center for the Caribbean Area, the voice of the United Nations in the Caribbean. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. For more content in this series, find and follow this podcast on Spotify, Google, Anchor FM, and other popular streaming platforms.